Welcome to Tales from SYL Ranch, the BitChute channel where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone. Well, happy Thanksgiving to those of my viewers in the United States. In fact, I'm going to go completely outside of my brand today, do a very special episode of Tales from SYL Ranch that involves something that is kind of near and dear to my heart because of when and where it happened. And so I'm going to do something that I have never done before on the show, and you have never seen me done it before on the show, and I need these headphones to do it right. So, without any further ado, this song is called Alice's Restaurant. It was written by legendary folk singer Arlo Guthrie, and it's about Alice and the restaurant. But of course, Alice's Restaurant was never the name of a restaurant. That was always just the name of the song. I guess that's probably why Arlo still calls this song Alice's Restaurant. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Walk right in, it's around the back, just a half a mile from the railroad track. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Well, I guess it all started about 54 Thanksgivings ago. That'll be 54 years ago today, which happens to be my very first Thanksgiving in the world, when Arlo Guthrie and took one of his friends, and they decided to go up and visit Alice at the restaurant. Now, of course, Alice didn't used to live in the restaurant. She used to live in a church nearby the restaurant, which is, by the way, the church you see right behind me. In fact, Arlo Guthrie later bought it, and it is now an artistic center of his. But they didn't used to live in the church exactly. They lived in the bell tower with their husband Ray and Facha the dog. Now, living in the bell tower of this here church, they used to have a lot of room downstairs where the pews used to be. Seeing as how they took out all of those pews and having all that room, well, they decided that they didn't have to take out their garbage for a long time. Well, Arlo and his friend got up there. They found the place was filled with garbage, and they decided that it would be a friendly gesture for them to take the garbage down to the town dump. So they took the half a ton of garbage, they put it in the back of a red VW microbus. They took shovels, rakes, and implements of destruction, and they headed on toward the town dump. Well, they got there, and there was a sign and a chain across the road, and the sign said, "Closed on Thanksgiving." Well, they had never heard of a dump closed on Thanksgiving before. And so, with tears in their eyes, they drove off into the sunset, looking for another place to put the garbage. They didn't find one, until they came to a side road, and off of the side road, there was a 15-foot cliff, and at the bottom of that cliff, there was another pile of garbage. Well, they decided that one big pile would be better than two little ones, and so rather than bring that one up, they decided to throw theirs down, which is what they did. They drove back to the church. They had a Thanksgiving dinner that couldn't be beat. They went to sleep, and they didn't get up until the next morning, when they got a phone call from Officer Obi. And he said, "Kid, we found your name on an envelope at the bottom of half a ton of garbage. We just wanted to know if you had any information about it." Well, Arlo said, "Yes, sir, Officer Obi. I cannot tell a lie. I put that envelope under that garbage." Well, it was after speaking to Obi for about 45 minutes on the telephone that they finally arrived at the truth of the matter. Obi said they had to go down and pick up the garbage, and they also had to go down and talk to them at the police officer station. Well, now, friends, there were really only one or two things that Obi could have done at the police officer station. The first thing was he could have given them a medal for being so brave and honest on the telephone, which wasn't very likely, and they didn't expect it. The other possibility was that he could have bawled them out and told them never to be seen driving garbage around that vicinity again, which is what they expected. But when they got to the police officer station, there was a third possibility that they hadn't counted on, and they were both immediately arrested and handcuffed. And Arlo said, "Obi, I don't think I can pick up the garbage with these handcuffs on." He said, "Shut up, kid. get in the back of the patrol car. So they sat in the back of the patrol car, and they drove to the, quote, scene of the crime, unquote. Now, friends, I have to tell you about the town of Stockbridge, Massachusetts, where this was happening. Back then, they only had 3 stop signs, 2 police officers, and 1 police car. But when they got to the scene of the crime, there were 5 police officers and 3 police cars, because this was the biggest crime in the last 50 years, and everybody wanted to get in a newspaper story about it. And they were using up all kinds of cop equipment they had hanging around the police officer station. They were taking plaster tire tracks and footprints. They had dog-smelling prints, and they took 27 8x10 color glossy pictures with circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence against them. They took pictures of the approach, the getaway, the northwest corner, the southwest corner, and that's not even to mention the aerial photography. Well, it was after the ordeal, and they went back to the jail. Obie said he was going to put them in the cell. He said, "Kid, I'm going to put you in the cell. Give me your wallet and your belt." Arlo said, "Obie, I can understand you wanting my wallet so that I don't have any money to spend in the cell, but what do you want my belt for?" And he said, "Kid, we don't want any hangings." Arlo said, "Obie, did you think I was going to hang myself for littering?" Well, Obie said he was making sure. And friends, Obie was, because he took out the toilet seats so they couldn't hit themselves over the head and then drown. And he took out the toilet paper so they couldn't bend the bars, roll the toilet paper out the window, slide down the roll, have an escape and get away. Obie was making sure, all right. And it was 4 or 5 hours later that Alice... Hey, remember Alice? This is still a song about Alice. Well, Alice came by, and with a few nasty words to Obie on the side, she bailed him out of jail. They went back to the church. They had another Thanksgiving dinner that couldn't be beat. They went to sleep, but they didn't get up until the next morning, when they all had to go to court. Well, Arlo and his friend walked in and sat down. Obie came in with the 27 8x10 color glossy pictures with the circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence against them. He sat down. And then a man came in and he said, "All rise." And Arlo and his friends stood up, and Obie stood up with the 27 8x10 color glossy pictures, and the judge walked in with a seeing eye dog. The judge sat down. Arlo and his friend sat down. Obie looked at the seeing eye dog, and then at the 27 8x10 color glossy pictures, and he looked at the seeing eye dog, and Obie began to cry, because Obie had come to the realization that this was a typical case of American blind justice, and there was no way the judge was ever going to look at the 27 8x10 color glossy pictures with the circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one explaining what each one was to be used as evidence against them. And they were fined at $25 each, and they had to pick up the garbage in the snow. But that's not what everybody really came to talk about. That's more backstory. Now, when Arlo first talked about this, when he did this song, he used to talk about the draft. And we think that that's probably all over and done with now, but we still have the selective service. See, if you're a guy, when you turn 18, you have to go and register for the selective service. And if they have the war that's really bad, like World War II or Vietnam, well, they will call you up and ask you to select the service. And if you don't select the service, they will select the service for you. And they used to have a building in New York City on Whitehall Street, and others like it all across America, and that's where you used to have to go to get injected, inspected, infected, detected, neglected, and selected. Arlo Guthrie had to go in there one morning a long time ago for his physical examination. He'd gotten good and drunk the night before, but he wanted to look and feel and be like the all-American kid. But when he walked in that morning, he was hung down, brung down, hung up. He was all kinds of mean, nasty, ugly things, and he walked in, sat down. They gave him a piece of paper and said, "Kid, see the psychiatrist from 604. Well, Arlo went up there. He said, "Shrink, I want to kill. I want to kill. I want to see blood and gore and guts and veins in my teeth, and eat dead, burnt bodies. I mean, kill, kill, kill. And he started jumping up and down, yelling, kill, kill, kill. And then the shrinks started jumping up and down with him, and they were both jumping up and down, going, kill, 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 until the sergeant came over, pinned a medal on Arlo, sent him down the hall, and said, "You're our boy." Arlo didn't feel too good about that, but he proceeded on down the hall, getting more injections, inspections, and all kinds of stuff they were doing to him. He was there for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 hours. He was there for a long time, going through all kinds of mean, nasty, ugly things, and they were inspecting and injecting every single part of him, and they were leaving no parts untouched. Well, he went through all this mean stuff for hours and hours, and finally came time to see the very last man. Arlo said, "What do you want to see me about?" And he said, "Kid, have you ever been arrested?" Well, Arlo proceeded to tell him the story of the Alice's Restaurant Massacree with 5-part harmony, full orchestration, all kinds of other phenomenon, and he stopped him again, and he said, "Kid, did you go to court?" Well, Arlo proceeded to tell him the story of the 27 8x10 color glossy pictures with the circles and arrows and a paragraph on the back of each one, and he stopped him again, and he said, "Kid, I want you to go over and sit on that bench that says Group W. Now, kid." Well, you see, Group W is where they used to put you if you might not be moral enough to join the army after committing your special crime. And there were all kinds of mean, nasty, ugly-looking people on the bench. There were mother rapers, father stabbers. There were father rapers. I mean, there were father rapers sitting right there next to him on the bench, and they were mean and ugly and horrible and crime-type guys. And the meanest, ugliest, nastiest one, the meanest father raper of them all, was coming over to Arlo, and he sat down next to him, and he said, "Kid, what'd you get?" Arlo said, "I didn't get nothing. I had to pay $25 and pick up the garbage." He said, "No, kid, what were you arrested for?" Arlo said, "Littering." And then they all moved away from him on the bench, and they gave him the hairy eyeball and all kinds of mean, nasty, ugly things, until Arlo said, "And creating a nuisance." And then they all came back, and they shook his hand, and they had a great time on the bench talking about crime, mother stabbing, father raping. They were smoking cigarettes and just having a good time, discussing all this mean, nasty, horrible, ugly kind of things. And they were having a good time. And then, unfortunately, that's when the sergeant came over. And the sergeant, he had some paper. And he held it up in his hands, and he went like this. He had this paper, and he said, "Kids, this piece I've got 47 words, 37 sentences. We want to know the crime, the details of the crime, the arresting officer's name, anything pertaining to and about the crime, anything you got to say, anything went on with the crime, and then you got to think." And he just talked for like 45 minutes, and nobody understood a word he said. Well, they had fun filling out the forms and playing with pencils on the bench. Arlo wrote down the Massacree just like he was supposed to, and he put down his pencil, turned over his paper, and there on the other side of that piece of paper, in the middle of the other side, underlined, capitalized, and away from everything else on the other side, read the following words: "Kid, have you rehabilitated yourself?" Well, Arlo went over to the sergeant. He said, "Sergeant, you got a lot of damn gall asking if I've rehabilitated myself. I mean, I'm sitting here on this bench. I'm sitting here on the Group W bench because you want to know if I'm moral enough to join the army, burn women, kids, houses, and children in villages after being a litter bug." Sergeant said, "Kid, we don't like your kind. We're going to send your fingerprints off to Washington." Well, somewhere in Washington, enshrined in a little folder, is a study in black and white of Arlo Guthrie's fingerprints. It's been like 52 years, and they're still there. And And the reason I'm actually telling you the story is because they've been making a lot more lists since 9/11. I mean a lot more lists. And they've been putting a lot of people on it, people who don't deserve to be on those lists. In fact, I'm on one of those lists. And you might be on one of those lists. Or you might know someone who's on one of those lists. And if they take you in for questioning, well, there may be only one thing that you can do. That's to let them come in, do whatever you're supposed to do, and then you sing this. You can get anything you want at Alice's restaurant, and then lawyer up. Now, just one person did it. I mean, even today, if somebody walked in and sang in bar of Alice's restaurant, they'd say, hey, that guy is like 50 years too late. Get that guy out of here. He wasn't any threat. Now imagine two of them walking in hand, singing in harmony. I suspect they'd probably think you're both gay, and they'd say, hey, gay people are no threat. Probably could be. But let's let these guys go. Now imagine three people. Can you imagine three people walking in, singing some Alice's Restaurant and lawyering up? They might think it's an organization. Now imagine 50 people, maybe 50 people a day, walking in, singing Alice's Restaurant and lawyering up. And they would probably think it's a movement. Of course, most of them would be too young to know what a movement was. But that's what it was. It was the Alice's Restaurant anti-Massacree movement. That's what it was, that's what it is, and that's what it's always going to be. And all that you have to do to join is to sing it with me the next time it comes around on the guitar with feeling. Just waiting for it to come around again on the guitar. A little bit more. Here it comes. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Walk right in, it's around the back, just a half a mile from the railroad track. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Well, that sucked. I know, I know, you're watching me. You didn't actually sing along. Well, you know, you gotta learn, because it's been 54 years, you gotta learn that if you want to end things like the complete destruction of the Fourth Amendment, you gotta learn to sing loud all the time so people can hear you. Now, I know how long this song is. Oh God, believe me, I know how long it is. When this song first came out on a record album, it was 18 minutes and 20 seconds long. Coming up on that right now. And I'm not trying to make the song any longer, but I can feel it. I know that there are people watching me that don't believe that songs can change the world, or that songs can change the destiny of nations. To be honest, I wouldn't blame you, I didn't think so myself. But then on the 30th anniversary of this song, Arlo Guthrie added a little piece and made me think twice. And he hasn't sung it any time except on that one album. So I'm going to tell you about this. You see, I remember when Jimmy Carter was elected president, and Arlo Guthrie, well, he got an invitation to Jimmy Carter's inauguration. And Arlo knew he had to go because he knew it would be the only invitation he ever got. He's been right so far. Well, he went down to Washington. It was pretty much like you see on TV, you know, people partying and stuff, and everything was fine until one late towards evening, somebody came around and tapped Arlo on the shoulder. Arlo turned around, and it was Chip Carter, the president's son. Arlo said, "Hi, Chip," because they were about the same age and he recognized him. Chip said, "Arlo, I've been looking everywhere for you." Arlo said, "Chip, how come?" Chip said, "Arlo, I have something very important to tell you." Arlo said, "Chip, what is it?" Chip said, "Arlo, we were moving our stuff into the White House, and in the Nixon record library, we found a copy of your record, Alice's Restaurant. Arlo looked at Chip Carter. He looked deep into the man's soul, and he said, Chip, was it opened? And in slow motion, Chip Carter nodded yes, it had been opened. Now, I want you people watching me to know that nobody really thought about that for a very long time until, I guess damn near 35 years ago or so, when Richard Nixon passed away and everyone was thinking about him. And I know there's a lot of young people watching me tonight that don't know, but Richard Nixon used to be the president of the United States, and he used to like to tape stuff. Now, you have to imagine a world before we had reality TV, when there was only 4 channels if you were kind on TV. And if you wanted to tape something just with audio tape, you had to use a reel-to-reel tape recorder that was about this big, this wide, and this high. Well, Richard Nixon taped everything that went on in the White House. You have to imagine this was a man who was truly ahead of his time. He taped everything that went on in the White House, and everything was fine, till one day they started playing back the tapes. But that wasn't really what got the man in trouble. It was what he had erased from the tapes. Erasing something from a tape. It's kind of like deleting things. Why does that sound so familiar? Anyway, it wasn't anything on the tapes that got him in trouble. It was what he had erased from the tapes. In fact, there was one rather famous particular gap that Arlo Guthrie found himself thinking about one night when he said to himself, Arlo, how many things in the world are exactly 18 minutes and 20 seconds long? Well, how many things in the world are exactly 18 minutes and 20 seconds long? It's probably just a coincidence. But it's always been good enough for Arlo, and that makes it good enough for me. So when the song comes around again on the guitar, remember that songs can change the world, and songs can change the destiny of nations, even if it's only by coincidence. You just have to know the words, have the feeling, and sing it when it comes around again on the guitar. Here we go. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant, except in Alice. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Walk right in, it's around the back, just a half a mile from the railroad track. You can get anything you want at Alice's Restaurant. Mana, 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 at Alice's Restaurant. Well, that is all the time that we have today for this episode of Tales from SYL Ranch, the highly acclaimed, world-renowned show where everyone is entitled to my opinion. And I'm Bill Stone.
Ultimate power in this world has always been one simple thing: the control and manipulation of minds.